Thank you, Mr. Chair. Though we're here today to discuss President Trump's takeover of D.C. law enforcement, Chicago, which I represent, is also on Trump's hit list. President Trump has demonized and called Chicago a, quote, hellhole. Attorney General Schwab, in August, the president called D.C. a hellhole as well, right?
Yes, he did.
He also said, quote, Chicago is the murder capital of the world. And just yesterday, he called Chicago, quote, a death trap. I have here a list of states that, based on FBI data, have the highest number of violent crimes per capita. 4 of the top 5 states on this list are run by Republicans. And if you're talking about total murders in absolute terms, it turns out Texas is number 1. In this particular list here, Illinois is number 29. Now, Attorney General, you see Alaska tops this list. To your knowledge, the president hasn't called Alaska a hellhole, right?
I have not heard that.
And Arkansas is number 4 here. He didn't call Arkansas a hellhole, correct?
I have not heard that.
And you haven't heard the president talk about deploying the National Guard in Texas, correct?
I have not.
Folks, this isn't about crime. It's about politics. Just this week, Trump said, quote, I'm going to Chicago early against Pritzker. Pritzker is nothing. That's not how a president should be talking about any governor or any state. I'd like to talk about the National Guard deployment here in D.C. and the cost of it. Now, Mr. Jackson, as you said, I believe that the D.C. deployment is going to cost over $200 million, correct?
Correct. That's projection.
Let's see how this money is being used. Trump says it's for fighting crime. But here's a guardsman carrying trash. Here's a guardsman mowing the lawn. Here's a very nice gentleman, a guardsman carrying a leaf blower. Honorable work, certainly. But this is not why the taxpayers fund the National Guard. If Trump was serious about crime, he wouldn't cut nearly $4 million in federal funding for local violence prevention groups in Chicago. Attorney General, you'd agree the president should be funding these crime prevention programs, not cutting them, right?
As I said in my testimony, sir, prosecution and prevention are both essential to making sure cities are safe, and we have to do both. Crime intervention work, violence intervention work has been successful here in the District of Columbia in terms
You shouldn't be cutting that work,
driving
right?
gun violence down. We need to invest in it.
Not cut it, right?
Correct.
This week, I want to turn to another topic. In Elgin, a Chicago suburb in my district, an American citizen was pulled from his home, cuffed, and detained by ICE. And another U.S. citizen in Des Plaines, also in my district, was tased in the face and detained in another ICE operation. This is shameful, and I'm extremely concerned about the safety and well-being of my constituents. I'm also concerned about the devastating impact that out-of-control ICE raids and the deployment of the National Guard will have on the economy and jobs back in the Chicago area. Let's look at a couple stats. Foot traffic for Chicago's second most profitable business corridor on 26th Street is down 60% since ICE raids began. And this is not just a hypothetical concern that the same would happen with the deployment of National Guard. Let's look at what's happened to D.C.'s economy. Mr. Schwab, CNN has reported restaurant reservations decreased by as much as 31%, and foot traffic in retail stores is down 81%. Those reports show that the president's unilateral deployment of the Guard is hurting the local economy, right?
That's consistent.
Folks, our economy is softening. Unemployment and prices for necessities like vegetables are soaring. Mr. President, let's put aside politics and hostility toward governors and elected officials. Let's not take actions that hurt families and the economy. I'd like to turn to my final topic, and that's domestic violence. Attorney General Schwab, according to The Hill, President Trump suggested that, quote, a little fight with the wife shouldn't count in D.C. crime stats. You don't dispute The Hill reported this, right?
I saw that.
But there's nothing little about 12,000 victims of domestic violence in D.C. or nothing little about 50,000 Illinoisans experiencing domestic violence, correct?
No, it's a very serious crime.
There's nothing little about 12,000 children, more than 12,000 children who witnessed domestic violence in Chicago either, right?
It's traumatizing.
It's abhorrent that the president routinely dismisses violence faced by women. And given his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, this attitude, unfortunately, comes as no surprise. Let's be clear. There's nothing little about domestic violence, not the scale of the problem or the courage of the survivors. I yield back.